What's going on, ladies, gents, and kids of all ages? It is Eric coming back at you once again from the Nerd Cave, and today we're going to be taking another look at a different deck. This time it is going to be an updated list on Amethyst Amber, and we're going to be talking about a super budget version of this against the version that I'm playing today. It's really only a difference of a couple cards, so it's easy enough to build, but it drops the deck down from about a $200 deck to around a $100 deck. I do still consider a $200 option to be fairly budget in this game at this point, because there are some $500, $600, $700 decks running around out there, running Ursula, Robin Hood, Beast, pretty much all the expensive cards, Diablo, which is still crazy right now. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and talk about an updated set 4 version of Hyper Aggro. Alright, so the first card we're going to be playing, and this is going to be a 3-of in this deck, is going to be Magic Broom. Whenever you play another character, you may banish this character to draw a card, which is a fantastic ability, and a 1/2 stat line. Definitely not super relevant in keeping it alive. Mainly you're looking to banish this character right after questing to go ahead and draw a card. There is an argument to be made for playing Chernobog's Followers, but he's just a little easier to deal with in my opinion, so I went with the Magic Broom instead, and I think he's got an interesting trigger. Next up, for a couple different reasons, we are running a 4-of Cinderella in this deck. It's 1 cost, 1/2, Singer 3, Quest for 1. So she is primarily here to sing Friends on the Other Side and to act as a trigger for our fairy godmother, which you'll see later. But other than that, she's not doing a whole lot in this deck, but she is still definitely a 4-of in my opinion. There's an argument to be made for playing more songs, and then you could take a little bit better advantage of her. I do also have Bare Necessities in this deck, so I guess she could sing that as well. And next up, steering more into the aggro focus of this deck, seeing a list that is more similar to decks we've seen multiple sets ago, but we are looking at running 3-of Lilo. Still great in my opinion. 1/1 for 1, Quest for 2, really early aggression. Is it as good as Curse Merfolk? Probably not, but is it still great in an aggro deck in these colors? Absolutely. And then speaking of our 1-cost Quest for 2 characters, we are also playing 3 Maleficent, so 3 Lilo, 3 Maleficent. So if you're keeping track, that is a total of 6 characters that can come down for 1, Quest for 2, and they are all uninkable, but the uninkable count in this deck is fairly low overall. Playing 2 Shift Target Queens, 2/2 for 1, Quest for 1. Like I said, just there to go ahead and be a shift target. And some people may argue with this, but we're only on 3 Mim Snake. I don't think 4 Mim Snake is a necessity in this deck. There's some characters you really don't want to have to bounce back. It isn't all low aggro characters. This deck does have more of a curve into the late game, so I don't want to do damage that by drawing something like Meta Mim that's not going to be necessarily gaining you value like it would in a straight aggro build. But 3/3 for 3, Quest for 1. If you're not familiar, when you play her, you go ahead and return another character to your hand or banish her. Next up in the 2-drop slot, like I mentioned, we are playing 3 Bare Necessities. This is a song, cost 2. Chosen opponent reveals their hand and you choose a non-character card, which is important to note because it's not just a song card like Ursula. You can go ahead and take their Fishbone Quills, you can take their locations, so you can go ahead and really mess up a game plan that they have carefully constructed. It does pull away from the aggro theme a little bit, but like I said, this deck is built more to play into the mid/late game as opposed to Hyper Aggro, which needs to win in the first 5 turns. This is a little bit slower version, but still definitely Hyper Aggro focused. Then always a 4-of in my opinion. We do have 4 Kuzco, 1/2 for 2, Quest for 1, and whenever it is banished, no matter how it is banished, which I think is important to note, it doesn't have to be banished in a challenge, you're going to go ahead and draw a card. Then to further take advantage of our Cinderellas, we do have 3 Fairy Godmothers, 3/4 for 3. Fantastic stat line for 3. Being able to get 4 defense out of a 3-cost character and still 3 in the front is pretty fantastic. Quest for 1. Whenever you play a character named Cinderella, you can exert opposing characters. Really good ability. Definitely steers into the Shift Fairy Godmother, which we'll talk about a little bit more. You can do some kind of shenanigansy stuff when she's on the board and you drop a Cinderella. Then there is an argument for not playing this card. I still think it's really good, especially with Cinderella in the deck already. Friends on the Other Side just gives you more options. Of course, it is a song, so Cinderella only costs 1, and you can go ahead and sing this for free. So you could potentially take advantage of this on turn 2, netting 2 extra cards and really putting the pressure on your opponent. gives you the extra cards to be able to stabilize after a board wipe or after some kind of removal. Then we do have Madam Mim Fox, always a 4 of. Unlike Snake, I think Madam Mim Fox is worth the bounce back. But when you play this character, return a character to your hand, just like the Snake, but she is a 4/3/4/3 with Rush, and she is going to go ahead and quest for 1. So just a really aggressive card, deals with most early stuff in the meta. Even if you're on the play, it's going to be able to kill a lot of characters that have recently quested. In a lot of cases, she is going to be able to do that favorably. She can also sing your songs in this deck. And we do have 2 Doc, 2/3/3, quest for 2. When you quest, you're going to be able to reduce the cost of your next character by 1. A lot of people have made an argument for playing something like Lantern instead because it's a little more difficult to deal with, but there's a lot of item hate in the meta right now, and so I think having 1 or 2 items in a deck is a feel bad. I think you either have to be steered fully into items or no items at all, or like if you're going to do limited items, they need to not be important to your deck. So I just thought Doc was capable of getting a little more value than Lantern was in the current meta. And he's questing to trigger his abilities, so you're gonna get that quest in for 2, assuming they don't remove him immediately, and make your next character cost 1 less. And this is the card we're gonna talk about cutting to go ahead and make this a budget deck. Cutting 2 of Rapunzels, the deck only runs 2 Rapunzels, cutting 2 of them is going to reduce your overall deck cost by about $80. So like I said, that's going to bring you down from about a $200 deck to closer to a $100 deck. But she is a fantastic card, as everybody knows. 4 cost, 1/5, quest for 2. And when she comes into play, you can remove up to 3 damage from target character and then go ahead and draw from one of your characters, I should say, so you can't do it to an opposing character, and go ahead and draw 3 cards, 1 for each damage removed. If you want to not play the Rapunzel, though, here's an alternative option. You could go ahead and just run 4 Dolores in the deck. She's a good aggressive card. When you play her, if your opponent has an exerted character in play, you're going to go ahead and draw a card. So kind of giving you value like a rabbit, but she is inkable. She does also have 3 attack instead of 2, and she's going to go ahead and quest for 2 on your following turn, whereas Rabbit was only questing for 1. A lot of times Rabbit was being used to sing instead because that's what he was most relevant for. But Dolores Madrigal, fantastic card. Like I mentioned, if you need to get those Rapunzels out, go ahead and play 4 of these. I think this card is maybe 10 cents, probably less. And some people may say this is sacrilege, but it's just expensive. So we are only on 3 Merlin Goat instead of 4. 4/3/4 when it comes into play, and when it leaves play, you're going to go ahead and gain 1 lore, and you're questing for 1. Being on 3 Snake, you have less ability to bounce this anyway, so being on 3 Goat doesn't feel so bad, but it is a great way to close out games still, so of course he is still on the list. If you haven't seen people do some cheeky shenanigans with this, you haven't been playing the game long enough, but you can go ahead and drop one of these, play a Snake, bounce it back, and you're netting 2 lore that your opponent doesn't see coming. That can definitely close out a game. Then another 3 of in the deck. We are on 3 Queen's Castle, 4 cost location, 1 to move in, 7 willpower. Is going to net you 2 lore at the beginning of each of your turns, and at the start of your turn, if you have a character located here, you're going to draw a card for each character that is there. So if you can get several characters in there and get it to survive even for 1 turn, you can draw so many cards that it's overwhelming for your opponent, to the point that even if they board wiped, you're going to be able to go ahead and reestablish your board and just absolutely bring some damage. And this is a card I wish I made a list. I wish I made a video on my Shifty Fairy control list. I never talked about that deck in a video, but I did win at least at local league with it, and I think it was a really good deck, and it's a card I've been hot on ever since, and that's Fairy Godmother. 3 4 for 5, quest for 2, shift 2. Important to note, so you can play the Cinderella, you can get your smaller Fairy Godmother out, play the Cinderella, tap something down on the following turn, then go ahead and shift this down. Whenever this character quests, your characters gain Challenger +3, and when it's banished, return it to your hand. You can go ahead and play Cinderella, tap down one of your opponent's characters with the small Fairy Godmother's ability, then go ahead and quest in with her, giving everybody +3, and then you can actually attack with your Cinderella for 4, possibly removing one of their characters, very likely killing the Cinderella. She bounces back to your hand, and then you're in a position you'll be able to play her out again. The following turn, if you have any other characters on board, obviously you can take advantage of her ability with those as well. But Fairy Godmother, fantastic card. I was playing her initially with Steel. I think she's also very good with Steel, and the Steel Cinderella that lets you draw and discard. You can do it turn 4, where you go turn 3 Fairy Godmother, turn 4 play the Cinderella for 2, tap one of their characters, shift the Fairy Godmother for 2, and then go ahead and quest, give your guys bonus, swing in with Cinderella, and then you can draw and discard again when she comes back the following turn. So really good. And the next character we're playing, also a 2 of. I did do this as kind of a toolbox variant. I think that's worth noting. So there is an option to play more or less of certain cards as it suits your playstyle, but I wanted to have access to a lot of options. We do have the Queen, 4/3 for 5, quest for 2, shifts for 2, and whenever this character quests, chosen opposing character gets -4 attack, and one of your characters gets +4 attack. So really good in combination with the Fairy Godmother, obviously, but really good in combination with Fairy Godmother, and I think she's just a fantastic card. Can really disrupt what your opponent may be planning to do. Then another 2 of. We're not playing the shift target for this one, but she can be really another big surprise in the late game to your opponent, where it can really swing the game in your favor, where maybe they have a bunch of characters out, they're planning on just attacking in, killing whatever characters you have. Then you go ahead and throw down Akita, cost 5, 3/5, quest for 2, and when you play this character, all characters get -3 attack until the start of your next turn. So that can definitely turn off some of their attackers that would be relevant for taking out targets on your side of the board, and leave you in a position where you still have questers going into what is likely the final turn of the game, and can just ultimately win you the game. Then we do have a 3 of, and that is Perdita. This is another card. If you haven't seen it, definitely go back and check out my Mufasa Kicker deck. Perdita is a card that I was playing in that deck. I think she's really, really good, especially if you're playing a lot of relevant 1 and 2 cost characters. But she is a 6 cost, uninkable, quest for 2, 1/6 stat line, which is great. She does die to something like Maui, but not to much else. And when you play this character, and whenever she quests, you may play a character with cost 2 or less from your discard for free. So that, as mentioned, that is when she comes into play and also when she quests. So you can just keep recurring some of those early game characters that you were playing in this deck and just absolutely take control of things. Recurring Kuzco is particularly funny because every time he's getting banished, he is drawing you an additional card. So the double whammy of how that works is just particularly funny. And then obviously your 2 questers and things like that can just be great to recur and mess your opponent up. We are on 1 Chernabog. I think everybody's familiar with Chernabog. He is a 9/9 for 10, quest for 3. For each character in your discard, you may put 1 less to play this character, and when you play this character, shuffle all characters from your discard back into your deck, so he can go ahead and recycle all of the characters in your discard back in, and you can just continue to draw them. It makes it really difficult for opponents to deck you out when you are playing this card, as long as you are able to play it and don't end up having to discard it before you can do so. But for each character in your discard, you pay 1 less, so a lot of times he's coming down for 4, 5, 6 ink, maybe even less than that if you had a lot of characters destroyed really early, and can really throw off what your opponent's going to do, especially if they're playing something like Steel, because Steel is likely not going to be at a point in the game where they can deal enough damage in a turn to kill him. So fantastic quester and attacker. Fantastic card. But that is the extent of the deck. That was the final card, as you mentioned, as you may have guessed, since I was going up in ink cost throughout the video. I am not playing anything that costs more than 10. But what do you think of this deck? Do you think Hyper Aggro is a good option? Do you think it's competitive enough? Do you think it just loses to Steel all the time? Probably. I tried to give it some option of Recursion to hopefully keep up with Steel, be competitive with Steel. I am going to have more giveaways coming at you. The playmat, people didn't seem too wild about, so we're going to look at doing something different, possibly another booster box at some point. So if that's something you're hyped for, definitely make sure you're clicking the subscribe button if you haven't already. When we hit 1,500 subscribers, we'll go ahead and give away another booster box, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. But remember, when you see those toys, video games, and Chernabog at the end of an aggro deck off in the distance, it is not a mirage. You guys have a great day.